Lakeland Currents is sponsored by Nisswa Tax Service. Nisswa Tax Service offers tax preparation for individuals and businesses. Across from City Hall in Nisswa and on the web at nisswatax.com.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Lakeland Currents. One of my favorite things to do on this show is to spend some time with people who spend time in the outdoors. It's kind of near and dear to my heart, so I try to do a couple shows a year where we're talking about the outdoors. And one of the things that I've always been interested in doing is trying to do something to make probably a wider awareness that there's a lot of opportunities for women in the outdoors. And when I do a lot of the fishing things that I do, and I go on a lot of hunting things I do, it seems like we're seeing mostly men. And so I've always encouraged my daughter and my granddaughter and other women to get involved with the outdoors. Well, today my guest is someone who doesn't need to be invited in the outdoors. She has truly lived in the outdoors most of her life. Her name is Mandy Urick. Welcome to the show, Mandy.
Thank you, Ray.
It's nice to have you here. And that's true, isn't it? You really grew up in the outdoors. Tell us, first of all, people don't know anything about you perhaps, but tell us, first of all, where you're from and what do you do?
I'm originally from North Dakota. I moved here. I went to the school at the U of M where I double majored. And now I live here in Brainerd. I'm the statewide wildlife depredation biologist.
And what does a depredation biologist do? I can't say it, so what do you do?
We do deal with any kind of animal complaints, any kind of damage to agricultural crops, specialty crops, apiaries, feedlots, stockyards, anything like that. So we're here as a program to help out the public with that.
And you are a trained biologist.
I am.
And you said for a while you worked with MnDOT before?
I did. I worked in a biology position for them too as their integrated resource coordinator.
And so you're sort of a statewide officer now, aren't you? I mean, you cover the whole state?
I do. I oversee the whole state and I assist all 250 wildlife staff.
And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this portion of what you do, but what are the typical kind of complaints that you deal with?
Deer. Even with our deer numbers being down and everybody complaining about low deer harvest numbers, in certain areas we have pockets of high deer densities and they really do affect the agricultural producers. So they need some additional help in abatement or hunt management, things to help them on their own properties. Wintertime with stored forage so the deer aren't in there. We deal with bears in yards, bears in apiaries, a lot of goose complaints, especially when they're in the molting season where they're stationary and they're eating people's crops. So turkeys, we've got it all.
But that's not really why I wanted you to have you on the show, because you do that. We can get DNR people on the show lots of times. What you do, I think, is some things that you do are very, very unique for a woman. And I think it is so cool that you've gone and ventured into some of the new things. Let's just talk about your fishing first, because you do a lot of things besides fishing, but you are a Bass Pro fisher person, aren't you?
I am.
And how many tournaments do you fish a year?
Close to 30.
Wow. And is that mostly Minnesota tournaments, or do you travel to other areas?
The majority of them are actually held in Minnesota, but it depends the circuit. I started with a circuit here and went to the state and then went to nationals and ended up in West Virginia last year. So you never really know where you're going to end up. It could be Texas, Tennessee, anywhere.
And what's the circuit that you're in?
I fish 4 circuits.
You fish 4?
Yes. So some of them are team events, some of those are singles events, and 2 of them are pro-am events. So we get linked up with random co-anglers to go fish a tournament.
Now, you said you came from a pretty large family, if I remember, 5 or 6 brothers?
5 older brothers.
5 older brothers. You're the youngest in the family.
I am.
And do your brothers fish and hunt?
No.
No?
They don't.
Really? How about your mom or dad?
My dad did. We grew up on the water. We had a resort on Devil's Lake, and my dad spent all his time out there. So I think that's where I got the bug from.
Now, does your family still live in that Devil's Lake area?
Yes, they do.
That's really changed too, hasn't it? Wow.
Night and day.
Yeah, it's amazing. So tell me how you got into the bass fishing.
Came here, obviously had a really strong walleye side coming from Devil's Lake, and that's what we fished. We moved to Minnesota and kind of branched out, but specifically when I moved to the Brainerd Lakes area, this is what I feel is the mecca of Minnesota for fishing. We've got phenomenal lakes and rivers, plus this is the home of Angling Edge and In Fisherman, and there's a lot of really good anglers here. And I wanted to learn how to bass fish. I mean, really learn how to bass fish, and got in with some people that were good anglers and said, hey, learning in the boat's the best way you're going to do it. So get in the boat and start fishing some club tournaments. So I fished some local club tournaments as a co-angler, began my career that way. And what I learned in a couple of years is more than what I could have read or watched on TV all winter long, trying to take notes, and it blew up from there.
And how long have you been doing the tournament fishing?
I've been tournament angling now about 7 years.
And before, when you lived in the Devil's Lake area, did you fish a lot then as a youngster?
Yes, so every day we were on the water. I did a lot of guiding growing up.
Really?
So, yes.
So did you
walleye guiding, surprisingly.
Not perch?
We did some perch too.
But walleye was the key.
Yeah, walleye was the key, or big pike. So.
And that freshwater shrimp in that lake just make it a phenomenal resource, doesn't it? It's just incredible to this day.
Yep.
And it's growing all the time. So you've got into the bass fishing, and it's really true, there's a real skill to bass fishing, isn't there?
There is. Everybody rips on bass fishermen that they're so easy to go out and catch, and truly they're not. I have spent more on tackle and bass than I did for all of my walleye, pike, and muskie things that I have. It's really in depth. It truly is, and it just keeps growing to the sport itself.
And I know how many TV shows have you been on? You've been on a number of TV shows, just roughly.
Maybe 20.
20 TV shows. Mostly as a bass angler?
I would say about 50-50. I did a lot for hunting before I started doing a lot of the bass and multi-species angling. Majority of them right now, because I'm so busy with the tournament angling, I can only do 3 or 4 bass ones in the summer, so I've been really concentrating on the ice fishing ones for multi-species, lake trout, pike, walleye, crappie. So. Well,
we're going to be showing some of your photos that you provided for us, and it's phenomenal. And not only are the pictures great, but the fish are large. I think I have to start coming with you and learning how to catch some of these big ones. I catch the little ones, and it's just amazing to me what you've done. So in addition to being an employee for the DNR, you really are a businesswoman now with your own business, aren't you?
Yes. So I do outdoor speaking, obviously, at multiple events. It's outdoor venues or boat shows, expos, but also have gotten involved with some other entities to do outdoor education, predominantly for women and children, and that's really where I see things blowing up and going.
Now, you said you're involved with an organization, and what's the name of that organization?
It's called BOW. It's Becoming an Outdoor Woman.
B-O-W.
Yes, and it's actually a program it's provided through the Department of Natural Resources. So people can sign up for a plethora of different items, classes at any skill level. We cover hunting, fishing, kayaking, birding. I mean, if any interest anybody has, they can simply go on the BOW website, figure out a time and a date that's applicable for them, and sign up for one of the classes. And it's not just in classroom, it's a lot of it's hands-on.
I know a fair amount of women who really do enjoy fishing, but feel embarrassed that they don't know how to back up a truck and back a boat into the lake. So this kind of a program provides that hands-on opportunity, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and it's the same thing. It's that safe environment. And we have heard a lot of women come to me and said, how did you get into this? Weren't you intimidated? You know, I didn't have these kind of programs or opportunities. I was just kind of thrown in the mix and learned from it. But now that we have those classes available and everybody's comfortable, and you can put people in the skill sets that they belong into, so they don't feel like everybody's talking over their head. Everybody's on the same level in the learning page.
Who's helped you in your business development as you start? Because your website is called bassandgirl.com. And if anyone wants to go to that website, it's really, really well done. But who are some of your influencers that got you going in this area?
I was really lucky. When I moved to the area originally, the Linders were hands down phenomenal, kind of scooped me up, saw the spark that I had with fishing, and invited me along on a lot of the trips, which led to doing some fishing shows with them. At the same time, I met Steve Panaz, actually through my work when I was working for the federal government doing some land management stuff. And he has been instrumental to pushing me of saying, you're your only limitation, so sky's the limit, go with it. Wild Dakota TV show. There's so many people just in this area that are willing to help, which has been really nice. And without them, I couldn't have done any of it.
Did you ever get to know Tony Dean before he passed?
I didn't.
He was a very influential person in the Dakota area, of course, before he passed a few years back. But the Linders have the Angling Edge, of course.
Correct.
And they are here in Brainerd. And a lot of people may not know this, but they also are a production house for a lot of different television shows around the area. I think the last count there were 10 or 11 television studios producing outdoor shows in the Brainerd area.
Yes.
Brainerd Lakes area. Peterson's Outdoors is another one, Babe Winkleman. So there's a lot of activity from the creative side in the Brainerd Lakes area for those kinds of programs.
Yes.
Now, when you travel for your bass, I suppose you have to take, I fished a tournament or two in my life, and I know it's a block of time you have to take off to do that. Are you limited sometimes to what you can do just because of your job?
I am, absolutely. 1 year limited with this how much vacation time you have. Having the career that I have, though, you know, I'm just shy of 14 years right now. I do get a lot of vacation per pay period, which is nice, and holiday. So I do try to plan them out accordingly ahead of schedule of, okay, I've got this, 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 and this, and I only have X amount of hours. And sometimes it does get to that point where I just simply have to say I don't have the time to do it, or it's a really busy season at work, and my work has to come before going and playing on the water.
For some reason or another, the bass fishing tournaments nationally have done so much better than walleye tournaments. The walleye tournaments have not had the sustainability that the bass tournaments have had. But bass, I think, is growing in our area. There's more and more evidence to show that our waters are starting to warm. And as they do warm, we're going to probably have more and more bass growth in this area and less freshwater fish. I'm losing my voice here for some reason or another. Sorry about that. But do you think that's true?
I do think it's true. I can preface a couple of lakes actually in Minnesota that were predominant walleye lakes, Lake Minnewaska for one, since I lived down there. Back in the day, it was a walleye lake. The water quality was actually quite low because of what's going on in the surrounding areas. The water quality got better, and because of it getting better, the clarity got better, and with the clarity getting better, more weed growth and vegetation in there, which produces a better base for bass.
What do you like to do besides bass fishing? Give us a few.
What do I like to do besides bass fishing? Just fishing in general. I love to fish any species, and if I ever get the opportunity, I always jump on to go do something I've never done before. But I like traveling, and I love hunting, obviously. So I've hunted from the northern peak of Ontario all the way down the southern tip of Mexico.
You just got back from a wolf hunt, and wolf hunting is very controversial in Minnesota, but you've been hunting in Ontario.
Correct.
Where it isn't controversial at all because the wolf population numbers there are very, very high. And you said the deer numbers are dwindling, partially because of wolves, partially because of the harsh winters. Just briefly, tell us about your hunt. You were up in Ontario. It was 47 below.
Yes, it was 47 below. I've been in some pretty extreme temperatures before, hunting and or fishing. This one by far was the hardest. I got invited up actually from one of the local guides. I'd had his wife down here for 2 weeks and took her on a hunting adventure that spanned 3 states, and she got to experience some new species and the hunting things they don't have the opportunity in Ontario. So in return, they invited me up there for a wolf hunt. It's beautiful. The terrain was great. The temperature wasn't, though. It was so cold that one day we went to turn the Mr. Buddy heater on, and it shattered.
Wow.
So at negative 47, nothing works. Snowmobiles don't run, you don't work, guns don't work, and obviously Mr. Buddy heaters don't work.
So what was your technique for hunting in Ontario generally?
The way that they like to do it, they can bait up there, so that nothing ever goes to waste in those areas. So the carcasses that were left over from their deer and their moose seasons, they save those. So they'll take the moose or the deer out and they'll partially drill into the ice and then put them down there and let them freeze in the ice so they easily can't be dragged off by the wolves. And then we'll set a blind up, and that blind will be anywhere from 150 to 275 yards away, back set into the trees. So it's open face, bull blinds, overlooking your bait piles.
And this particular trip, you didn't see any?
We did see some wolves on our way out to one of our bait sites the one day. They seemed to be fairly active. Obviously knew something we didn't, that it was going to turn horribly cold. And once the temperatures plummeted to almost negative 50, not even the birds would come into the bait piles. So
wow, too cold for everybody.
Too cold for everybody.
Wow. Now, when you said you took his wife on a 3-state hunt, what were you doing there? What were you hunting?
Pheasants.
Oh, pheasants.
Yes, so that was a really neat opportunity because I spent a lot of time up there. I filmed with those guys too for fishing shows, and I've deer hunted up there with them. But yeah, that was August's very first pheasant hunt. So she got to see the Midwest and got to shoot a lot of birds too.
So have you ever shot a wolf yet?
No.
How about a bear?
Yes.
And with a bow or a rifle?
With a muzzle loader.
With a muzzle loader. Was
Yes.
that a Minnesota bear?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And what part of the state?
The Northeast.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow. Was that
Isabella
pretty
area.
Oh, sure. Was it pretty exciting?
Yeah, it was.
I'll bet. And was it a boar?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, you also have had some run-ins with alligators. It's not crocodiles, because that's
It's
a South
alligators,
American. Right,
correct,
it's an
but-
alligator. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
This fall, in September actually, I got to go down to South Carolina and participate in a hunt down there. So normally if the everyday Joe goes down there, you can buy one tag. I went down there and actually went on a depredation hunt. So we're out there on private lands managing the alligators. We're not there to eradicate all of them. We're basically there to eradicate the nuisance ones. These are large hunt clubs that have people come in and they've got multiple swamps and they want to duck hunt. Well, 9 to 12-foot alligators really like hunting dogs to eat.
Really?
So I got the opportunity to go down there and work one-on-one with a specialist, kind of like what I do up here, but a whole new species down there, and get my hands on them. And it's nothing like you see on TV. There is no giant hook hanging out of a tree with some meat on it, and you don't drive around in boats. We are predominantly using wire snares, just like you would use up here for coyote snares. Much bigger down there, staking them in and putting them on the runs. So that was neat to be able to.
So did you catch some?
6 of them.
Because I know that I've seen the pictures of one. So you caught 6 of them. What would be the length of the biggest?
The biggest one was just shy of 11 feet and over 700 pounds.
Wow, that's a big alligator, isn't it?
And you physically have to drag them out of the water, and you can't tell how big they are because of the vegetation on the sides of the shorelines. So once you get them through there, they're alive, and they're snapping, and they're snarling, and they're rolling, so it gets pretty intense.
Wow. And then you finish them off with a pistol or something?
Eventually, that's after you jump on their back and tie up their nose and hogtail their front and their back
Did you
legs.
do that?
I did.
Were you scared?
Yes.
At least you're honest. I think most of us would be. Because they are so powerful, 700 pounds.
Yeah.
Their tails are very dangerous, aren't they?
And that's very interesting. And the predominant why they do that, where they tie them up, is even after an alligator is dead, hours after it's dead, the muscles are still working and they'll start to flail and flop and scratch.
Oh, really?
So when you've got 6 or 7 alligators in the back of a four-wheeler, actually a gator four-wheeler, you don't need a 700-pound alligator rolling over and scratching you or something like that. So we tie them up, and plus it helps to. The only thing that is true about you see on TV shows is there is a sweet spot to kill an alligator, and we want to do this the most humane way possible. One shot, said and done. So if they're tied up, they can't roll around on you. It's an easy, nice, clean kill.
Interesting. So, have you had any scary events in your outdoor career that you would want to talk about?
I've had a couple of them. I had one bear hunting where I was going in the morning, and it was a hike in, and I was carrying my buckets, and I've got my scent lock on, and it's dark, and I'm about to go through the tree opening to put my bait out into my bait site, and I heard it. And the bear was there already. And then my heart started pumping, and then I thought, I'm in scent lock and I'm carrying 2 buckets of yummies. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be breakfast. So that was probably the scariest. So it ended up fine. The bear heard me. I actually started singing Mary Had a Little Lamb, and it ran off. I can't blame it. I'm not much of a singer. So
That's a good story. And what else? You must have had a couple others.
Oh, the alligator one probably overall for me was a hard one to overcome. Just seeing the sheer size and the power of them.
And you're not very big. It's hard to tell on TV, but you're not a very big person.
No, when a little 110-pound person jumps on the back of a 400-pound or a 700-pound, and we had multiple sizes from 8 feet to 11 feet. But that first one, when you get on and they say, no one's going to be able to help you, you have to be very confident. There is no being sheepish or timid. You'd have to attack it and just do what you need to do. So that was a mind over matter one, but I got all 10 fingers and toes. So.
How about deer hunting? You do a fair amount of deer hunting?
I do.
Bow or rifle?
All of it.
All of it?
I prefer actually not to rifle hunt. If I'm going to use a firearm, I'll use a muzzle loader. But I do love to bow hunt. I haven't really had any scary experiences, but I've seen some really beautiful experiences. Probably one of the first hunts I had in northern Ontario, being 2 hours away from civilization and having to take an hour boat ride and hike in and find my stand and get there. And then all of a sudden, that was the first time I'd ever seen a wolf. And it was so close, and it was right there. And then I was thinking about I have to hike out of here at night a mile back to the shoreline by myself. So that was a little nerve-wracking.
How about moose?
I have not had the opportunity to moose hunt yet. That's on my bucket list.
Caribou?
Nope.
Okay. Tell us just a little bit about the club for women or girls who want to get involved with this outdoor activity. How do they get started? What should they do?
Pick what you want to do. If you want to get into fishing, every little area has some kind of fishing club. And Brainerd, we're really lucky here because we have multiple leagues with multiple species. So it's not just bass. If you like, get into a walleye league, get into a muskie league, a pike league, get into a multi-species league. Call around, and they usually have openings for co-anglers. But you don't have to have a boat. I mean, you got a fishing rod, that would be great. But most of the time, people are great enough just to let you get in the boat and go fishing for it. Try it out, see if it's something that you want to do. And if it is something, then you can keep going with it. If there's some additional education that you want, we offer some additional classes up through the bow program for any species, even fly fishing.
So would they get that bow program through the website? Can they go to that?
Yep, absolutely.
And it's called what again?
Becoming an Outdoor Woman.
Becoming an Outdoor Woman, and then there are options under there of who to contact?
Yep.
Okay, because I just think that is so cool. One of the fastest growing sports in Minnesota is rifle shooting in our high schools with teams. What do they call it? I forget what they call it now, but that's really a fast growing sport for girls.
Yes.
There's more and more girls getting involved in that, and I know many of the communities here in central Minnesota have those teams now in their high schools where kids are getting outdoors and learning how to do that sort of thing. You've done a lot of your hunting and fishing on your own, haven't you? You've been a kind of a lone warrior in a lot of these activities. And if someone hasn't ever gone out and pre-fished from dark to dark, it's very demanding.
Yes.
It's very, very, very demanding. Even though you're not throwing musky lures, and you've done that too, I
yes.
know. But bass fishing can be very demanding if it's hot and sunny or windy. How do you get through those days?
Glad, not that I don't like my job, but I say any day on the water is a good day. I mean, even if the weather's bad, you can't pick and choose your tournaments, and you can't pick and choose when you're going to guide. You just have to get through it. But I always try to find that one piece from the day that I learned something.
And what's the best you've placed in tournaments?
I've won multiple tournaments.
You have won multiple tournaments.
Yeah, my last year's season was a good season. The season before, though, was a dream season for me. I believe I had 9 wins.
Wow.
And I had 15 in the top 4. So
wow.
It was a very good tournament
So how do
season.
the guys like that?
Some of them are really good, but nobody likes to be beat by a girl. But I do have to say, putting my time in and going shoulder to shoulder, and they see that I'm very serious about it. But I'm the one who comes with a smile and cracking jokes in the morning, and I want it to be fun, for everybody. Mm-hmm. And they've really been a blessing, and they share information and, tips and techniques. And I had blown up my motor one time at a championship, and I was stuck in the middle of Leech Lake, and the waves are pounding in. I could have swamped my boat, and I had a competitor who was in the running for the money that day stop and haul me all the way into shore. It took an hour out of an 8-hour tournament to haul me in.
Wow.
So I think it says a lot.
Yeah, you bet it does. Now, I know you've fished lake trout.
Yes.
You've fished muskies.
Yes.
You fish walleyes. You fish bass, obviously. I saw a whitefish rather.
Yep.
Do you spear? Have you done some spearing?
And I actually just got to go spearing for the first time 2 years ago up on Washburn Lake with a fellow DNR employee who introduced it to me, and I see why people like that. It's like the perfect combination of fishing and hunting. Yes.
It really is like hunting. Yeah. And it's really interesting. You and I were talking about this before we went on the air, but at the end of January, the DNR is changing the slot at Red Lake from 3 to 2. And this has happened on Mille Lacs. There's so much fishing pressure in some of these lakes when there's a good bite.
Correct.
That our lakes really just can't hold up to it anymore. I mean, they can blame it on netting and not enough bait fish or whatever it is, but when you see thousands of wheelhouses going out in a lake, that's taking its toll, isn't it? It really is.
It is. And we didn't see that 25 years ago because we didn't have the technology. We didn't have Facebook and the internet and all these things that instantaneously everybody knows exactly where the spots are at and what's going on.
It's my feeling, and a feeling I think of a lot of the guides in the area, that our deep water walleyes are gone. Most of them were caught with the technology in the wintertime in some of those deep holes. And most of our walleyes now seem to be the stocked fish that are hanging back into the weeds. Because I think that technology has changed the way our whole fishing has evolved.
Oh, absolutely.
It really has, yeah. So what have you got planned for this next year now?
Oh, this is going to be a really exciting year for me. Just on the fishing side of loan, for tournament stuff, I left Ranger and I went back, and I've now got a full sponsorship from Lund Boats, which I'm really excited about. It's a boat that I grew up in my whole life, you know, fished out with my dad. We guided out of Lunds. I trusted them. You know, they're great quality boats. They're made here in Minnesota, so I'm excited to be fishing out of a Lund this year. But I coupled that with the new Evinrude G2 motor, which isn't a normal coupling between the motors. That's usually a Mercury Lund. So I'm two products that I'm extremely excited about, just to be able to use and to showcase and have people come out and see those. So
you're going to have one of the few that are going to be running around that look like what you have, aren't you?
Correct.
That's pretty cool.
So that's going to be neat. I'm doing a lot more national tournaments. I'm cutting down on the total number of tournaments and focusing on the bigger circuits this year. I've got multiple TV shows lined up. I've started doing more outdoor writing too. I've got 4 magazines now that I'll be writing for as the Bass and Biologist.
And what are those magazines? Do you remember them all?
I can't remember them all.
Okay.
I'm going to be in trouble.
Okay, that's all right.
And then doing a weekly radio spot too for Minnesota Sporting Journal.
Great, great. So you're expanding your brand,
yes.
Aren't you? Where have you fished muskies and how have you done? I know you've got some muskies on your website that are pretty nice fish.
Yes, one of the biggest ones has been caught locally, and I don't want to say where, but pretty much out my back door. I do go up to Mille Lacs a lot. I've been down on Tonka. I've been up to Lake of the Woods. And I've also hit a couple of very small rivers in Minnesota that produce very big fish and a lot of fish. So
when you muskie fish, do you typically go with someone, so you've got somebody to help you net it, or?
Yeah, that's one of the few, especially on big water, but with a 50-inch or even a 40-incher, trying to land one of those on your own. I don't want to take the time or injure the fish. It's always best to have someone in the boat. And someone's got to run the camera too, so someone's got to be there to take the pictures.
So you don't have your own TV show yet.
I don't.
But you're on a lot of TV shows.
I am.
And probably that's the best deal yet.
Oh, can't go wrong with it.
Because I know you were on with Steve Panaz last year on Lake Commandos. And I think he was bragging a little bit. He did catch a few more bass than you did, didn't he?
Yeah, well, I've got the invite to come back this year, and it was only by a couple, so I'm excited to have my rematch against him for sure.
That's great. We're out of time. It went fast, and I told you it would go fast. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to find out more about Mandy, go to Mandy Urick, U-H-R-I-C-H, rather. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mandy Urick. She's called the Bassin' Girl, and she has a website. And especially young women and girls, if you're interested in getting in the outdoors, she can get some information for you for BOW, for the women who want to be in the outdoors. I just think it's a great program, and it's a great thing you're doing for young ladies.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. This was truly an honor to be on.
Thank you for being on the show. You've been watching Lakeland Currents. Well, we're talking about what you're talking about. I'm Ray Gildow. So long until next time.